Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Willy Daunic of 102.5 The Game. He's a former Commodore basketball and baseball player, as well as the television play-by-play man for the Nashville Predators. This episode presented by the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well is a coffee house with a mission to bring clean water to the world. It has helped over 30 communities across the globe have access to safe water, health, and hope. You can make an impact by visiting one of its 4 locations in the Nashville area. Those are Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. You can get more information at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. The news brought to you by our friends at Sutherland & Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who've been injured in accidents. If you or someone you know has been in a wreck or other accident, reach out to them at Sutherland & Belk and see what your rights are. You can get their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, the Commodores, after a week-and-a-half layoff, resume basketball again. Vanderbilt will host Liberty at 7 Saturday night in Memorial Gymnasium. The Flames unbeaten at 11-0 and one of just 5 teams nationally without a loss. The guest line is brought to you by our friends at Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on Boll & Branch sheets for years. They're amazing. Had no clue what I was missing until I got them. They are fair trade certified, meaning they're made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Willy Daunic is our guest now. Willy, we appreciate you joining us today. In the midst of your hectic schedule, easy for me to say. Hope you are doing well.
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Let's talk hoops. I wrote this week that I thought that the 6-2 start, the way that it had come down for basketball, the way they had looked, the specifics about some games was not something we should draw sweeping conclusions from, but I was more encouraged than discouraged. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm with you. I'm very encouraged. Now, I think one thing we have to keep in mind for certain, and we knew this was going to be the case, is the level of competition is going to go up here in another couple of weeks. And even for some of the tests they have, I think it's a good thing that you're going to see here in the coming weeks, that you're going to see a little higher level of competition even between what they have faced on average and what they're going to face in the SEC. So that's going to be the question with this team, is how many of these good things that they're doing can translate when the level of competition gets higher.
Well, and the level of competition goes up Saturday. They play Liberty, which is one of, I believe, 5 unbeaten teams in the country. That's a team that made the NCAAs last year, I believe, beat Mississippi State once it got there. So that is a really good test for them. Probably, other than the Richmond game, which was on the road, probably the biggest test they've had so far.
It will be a good game. They beat Liberty last year, and that was prior to the Darius Garland injury. Liberty, for those that may not follow them closely, is in the conference with Lipscomb and the Atlantic Sun. They ended up winning on Lipscomb's home court in the league final. Liberty and Lipscomb dominated the Atlantic Sun last year. It was a dramatic game. It was a great win for Liberty in front of a real hostile crowd, great crowd that Lipscomb had over there. And as you said, they went on and won a game in the NCAA tournament. And as I look at their team this year, I was peeking at their stats. I don't know exactly how many guys they have back, but they're undefeated, but they have played a number of games against very weak competition. So I think they're looking forward to seeing what they look like when stacked up against an SEC team. But they certainly will be confident, and there's a lot of belief in that program that they can go and win, I'm sure, in an SEC game.
I was looking at the Sagarin rankings and looking at how they picked the remaining games, they being Jeff Sagarin. I guess that's not a they, that's a he. And I was also looking at Ken Pomeroy's rankings, and he's got them 5-13 in the league. But as I looked through that, they had a surprisingly good chance to get to 500. I mean, if you just tweak a couple games by a point here and there and win the ones that you're supposed to. I was shocked at Both of them picked Vanderbilt to be under 500, but it wasn't by more than a couple of games. What do you think is a realistic scenario for them, and what would make you happy?
It's a great question. It's funny. I was doing the same kind of thing on the Ken Pomeroy. I did see the 5-13. In fact, I was looking further than that. They've got some of these next few games that they're going to be playing as really tight games. They've got the Liberty game as a very close projection. SMU and Davidson, some of these other teams that they'll be playing before the SEC part of the schedule starts. So these will be good tests. But if I were Jerry Stackhouse, I would stay away from any kind of expectations, because that's the luxury I think you have in year one when you take over a team that was at the bottom last year. But I would say if they were to win between 5 and 7 games in the league, I would think that's a really nice start. But things happen. Guys get hurt. Some teams that look really good right now end up not being good on the night that you play them. And then vice versa. Things can happen the other way too, where the league ends up being a lot stronger than you thought. But I want to see competitiveness more so than the actual record at the end. I want to see a team that really is gaining confidence, building a foundation, and a tough out in games. You can look good and lose, especially when the expectations are low. There's no moral victories, but I think you want to have everybody around the program saying that's a team that plays hard and is getting better. And that's a program that is going to attract good players in the future, that's got to be the goal for Jerry Stackhouse.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, and that's how I looked at it before the year. I think what has changed a little bit is that some of these games are a little bit more winnable based on some of the teams that are in the league and the way they're playing out of conference. For example, Jeff Sagarin's got Texas A&M number 202 in the country. Vanderbilt, he's got at 98. Sagarin's got South Carolina 120. I've seen Carolina play twice, and frankly, I'm surprised that they are not a good bit better than they are. And Sagarin has also, Pomeroy has got Vanderbilt a little bit behind South Carolina, but ahead of A&M. And with Pomeroy, I know that they bake, I think, the preseason rankings into the current rankings, I think, until about the middle of January, if I'm correct. So I think that the probabilities there are probably going to go up for them a little bit once that starts coming out of the ratings.
Yeah, that's the game that you play, right? Whether you're looking at an analytical site like Pomeroy or Sagarin, or just looking at the comparative scores, that happens a lot. One thing that I am curious about when I was looking at the Pomeroy stats, because you can play that game all year long in terms of how good is this team that you're playing, and is that an accurate ranking for them. But one thing that Pomeroy does that I really like is they show you the nation's average in each stat category and how you rank with what your team is doing. None of us would have said that this is a great shooting team on paper. Vanderbilt coming in, given the fact that the line is a little further out this year, and it's not like they were a great shooting team last year. Matt Ryan, who is on paper a very good three-point shooter, is not there. Garland not there. But Vanderbilt is shooting over 38% from three. Can they sustain something close to that as they go through the season? I think that will be an important question, because they're not a team that has a traditional post-up player, so they're going to need to continue to get a lot of points from the three-point line. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. Can they keep that percentage above the nation average, which is down a little bit? And that stands to reason, because it's a further shot now. It's about 33% around the country. And so with Vanderbilt at 38%, that's pretty good.
Well, and a couple more things about the league, and these sort of come together. One is the league on the whole is not as strong, apparently, as we thought before the season. Like, I'll give you an example. Florida. Florida's 40 in Sagarin, 35 in KenPom. And that's a game like if you play at Memorial Gym, all of a sudden you've got a chance to win. A lot of teams like that. There's this big middle with Florida, and then further down, Mississippi State, Georgia, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama. More NIT type teams than NCAA teams based on where the computers rank them. The elite teams at the top, aren't quite as elite. Kentucky, not where we thought they'd be. Tennessee's probably a little better than most people thought. LSU, probably about what most people thought. Arkansas, a little better. So looking at the league, a lot of those games in the middle seem more winnable. And number two, a lot of times in games, it's about making shots and the team getting hot one night and another team not. I think what you just said about three-point shooting is what gives them a chance. If this is who they are, then they're a better team than we thought. But also, you look around the league, you look at the three-point percentages of some of these other teams, there's not a lot of good shooting teams from distance in this league. And those two factors, A, that the teams in the league across the board are maybe not as good as we thought they were, and B, the fact that they lead the conference at three-point shooting where you've got, goodness gracious, you got 6 teams below 30% from three. That is a big equalizer for them.
Yeah, that is going to be something to watch, I think. Another way to look at it, and this is definitely something I'm concerned about, is remember that they've only played Vanderbilt one road game. They shot the ball really well at Richmond. I mean, they gave themselves a chance to win that game. I don't think I would say they should have won that game, but they were right. It could have gone either way, maybe either way, and they win that game. But can they shoot this well? Factor in that you're going to be on the road a lot more. So I don't think it's as easy to make as high a percentage on the road, but that remains to be seen. So that is a concern. And I think the next stepping stone as well would be, you just went sort of down the laundry list of what we think of a lot of these teams in the SEC. To me, getting back to where you have a chance to beat just about everybody at home, that's a stepping stone that I'd like to see. Because last year there were way too many times where they just got beat soundly on their home court. In college basketball, if you've got a good home court, and Vanderbilt does, then you want to feel like you got a chance to win, and you're going to win some home games, even against teams that might be a little bit better than you on paper.
Yeah, as we talk through this, and of course, Vanderbilt used to have a home court advantage as compared to how it played away from home, about as big as anybody's in the country. As we talk through this, I really do think there are some legit reasons to think that they could be a decent amount better at season's end than we thought in terms of win-loss record.
I think there's reason for optimism. I will put it there. And you're right. It's, if you're just strictly looking, let's just be totally honest. If their record is 5-13 or 6-12, even, that's still way better. That looks a heck of a lot better than what we saw last year. Anything is better, right? So it's going to seem like a very successful year if they can win a few more of these non-conference games and their records around 500 overall. I think that's not a bad first step based on expectations. But I think Jerry Stackhouse is probably hoping for a little more than that. With these things that we're looking at, reasons for optimism, he's going to try to seize on every one of those and maximize what he's got on this team. And I will say this: Aaron Nesmith, I think, is a special player. I'm really excited to see what he looks like night in, night out against league competition. I think he's got a chance to be all SEC.
Yeah, I mean, if Vanderbilt is just decent and can approach 500, I think he's got a chance to be player of the year. Anthony Edwards at Georgia is kind of in the same spot. He's second in scoring behind Nesmith, and he leads the league in steals, which is that's pretty significant when you're both scoring and you're doing something like that on the defensive end. But yeah, that player of the year race will be very interesting depending on what those two players' teams do.
Right, you hit on it. It's the team. The way the team does means a lot in that. Like, you can score a lot, you can lead the league in scoring, but you're not going to win player of the year unless your team is perceived to have, achieved about the most it can achieve. And a lot of times it'll go to the teams that are contending for the league title. I'd be surprised if Vanderbilt's in that category, but hey, that's why you play.
Well, and I feel obligated to pump the brakes a little bit because, again, Vanderbilt's schedule has not been tough, to say the least, and so It's easy to put up some inflated shooting stats maybe when that's the case. But again, all we have to go on is what we see, and I think what we see is is better than what we saw a year ago for sure. But a couple more things before I let you go. Let's talk about the baseball draft. That move to Omaha, it was announced this week. How significant do you think that is?
Well, I think you would agree with me. What took so long? Like, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's overdue. We've been to Omaha. I've been there twice now. It is such a great baseball haven. And I think Major League Baseball is going to kick themselves for not doing this 10 years ago. But better late than never, right? I think it's just going to be a fantastic atmosphere. It's going to bring more people into the college game. I think there'll be a reason for Major League fans for a little something to do, kind of like they came to the football draft. Now, the difference is, of course, it's in the middle of the Major League Baseball season. So the fans for each of the Major League teams are going to be swept up still in the daily activities of their team. But as a change of pace, I think you might have some Major League Baseball fans just coming in for that. I think it's an opportunity for Major League Baseball to try to seize on that. So I think you got an event. I think that and the Major League Baseball draft has never been an event, anything close to it. So this has got a chance to be a win-win for college baseball and, of course, for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, that's a great point. And two things come to mind. Say that, first of all, Omaha does a tremendous job of putting that event on. So I think the draft will be well done too. Number two, you will have a lot more media presence there because you will have, as you know, a lot of these kids that get drafted high are also playing in Omaha. So what you're going to have is a media contingent already on hand to cover the College World Series, and now I think they'll just go earlier to cover the draft.
Now, I haven't looked close enough, Chris, but so where does the draft fall based on the college season? Have they moved it to make it a little more? Because remember, one of the big belly aches, and I think a very legitimate one from the college fans, the college coaches, and the players was the draft was literally going on while gigantic regional games, super regional games were being played. Have they changed that?
Yeah, the draft is now the 10th to the 12th, and the World Series starts either the 12th or the 13th. I'll look that up as we're speaking. But yeah, it is right in between the Super Regionals and the start of the World Series.
Yeah, that's something that had to happen. So I think they've hit a home run here. I think they have addressed what needed to get addressed. And we know with each passing year, there are more and more kids that are getting drafted out of college baseball. So it's not. I think it used to be college baseball was not on the top of the mind because you were literally drafting guys from all over the place, and you weren't specifically thinking as much about the kids playing in the college baseball, NCAA tournament because it's a relatively small amount of players still playing. But for those players, it's been a huge distraction, and we've seen it affect, Vanderbilt players, a lot of SEC teams that are perennially in that NCAA tournament. So I'm glad that they addressed that. And now you have a chance to showcase the top players right after they've been picked, freshly off of that, and it'll be an even bigger storyline, I think, when the teams arrive in Omaha.
No doubt. The dates of the draft are indeed the 10th to 12th, and the series runs the 12th to the 14th. So the season also ending a couple days earlier, it seems like, and which, of course, is probably just a product of the calendar and when the days fall, because I think they usually started on Sunday, if I recall correctly. So there's that. But I've got a quick question for you from the mailbag before we run. Our mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them? Josh is your guy. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. Give him a try, and I think you'll be pleased. And Arbador says, lots of criticism has been directed at athletic director Malcolm Turner regarding the decision to keep Mason and lack of specifics on the strategic plan. In your view, what is fair and unfair? Ask both of us, and I'll let you start.
I say unfair to make a sweeping judgment one way or the other. There's so many moving parts here it's a very difficult set of circumstances when you think about the transition of the chancellor's office. The fact that Malcolm Turner inherited a coach that just had a contract extension. You're trying to be fair about. I think he is immediately and correctly assessed that the resources that the current football coaching staff in particular has been working with are well below par to the rest of the league. I think you're trying to be fair, and it is not easy to make a sweeping change. I talked to a lot of people who are very, very impressed with Malcolm Turner, and they think he's going to have great ideas. I think it just is something that remains to be seen, and that is he going to be given the true resources to implement all of his ideas? I think all of us can go back and remember plenty of ideas that have been shared and even plans written down on paper and how excited people have been about plans, but not all of the plans have been able to be carried out the way that David Williams wanted to, or maybe Chancellor Gee when he was there, James Franklin. I mean, name a coach. They've had some wants. They've had a wish list, right? I think Malcolm Turner has got that same wish list, and his might be bigger and grander than anything we've seen. But and he said he basically has been telling people, this is what I've been brought here to do. But the people that make the decisions above him have to give him the resources to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I just don't think we know what constraints he's up against. I've said all along I did not blame bringing back Mason on him. I just think there's a lot of factors there. I don't know that he had the authority in complete to do it with the chancellor situation and the things you've said. Number two, I think we're going to know a lot more when the strategic plan is released, which I think will be sometime before Valentine's Day. What he is able to throw out there and get approved, I think, is going to tell us a lot about the trajectory of Vanderbilt athletics, frankly, probably for a decade or two. I don't think that's overstating it, and in turn will tell us a lot about how effective Malcolm Turner will probably be.
I've seen people through the years, and Vanderbilt would be in here, but there's plenty of examples. I'll give you one recently. The group that is hoping someday to bring a Major League Baseball team to Nashville. They did a rendering of a stadium right next to the football stadium. It's a really interesting rendering, but obviously we have no idea whether that could ever happen or not. It's a dream, right? And nothing more. It's a drawing. So when they unveil what they're going to unveil, and let's just say for argument's sake, it's going to be sometime in February. At that moment, will Malcolm Turner be able to say, this is what's happening? This isn't a plan. This is more than a plan. This is happening. This is going to happen, rather than this is our plan and we hope it's going to happen. See, that's where I think he's being very careful about what he's willing to go out and say. Like, everybody would love for him to go out and say, hey, we're committed. This is what we're going to do. But until he's ready to really tell you what actually is going to be implemented, then it's no different than you and I making up a drawing of a brand new football stadium and here's where it could go and wouldn't this be great? You know what I mean? There's an in-between. He's got to be able to have enough substance behind the plan to where he knows that he's not promising something that he can't deliver on.
Yeah, and I think the delivery will be interesting, but the promise itself is also interesting because I keep hearing that they have big plans, that Malcolm wants to aim really high for these things, and I don't think that the university is going to approve something that it feels like, well, first of all, I guess a better way to put it is, what is the university going to be on board with? And then it gets to the can they raise it part, which I've heard they've already got some pretty significant pledges privately towards whatever they are planning. But that's just going to be the big thing is what does the university allow him to put out there to solicit funds for? What would the price tag on that be? Because I do hear that Vanderbilt is going to have a very significant matching campaign, I think, for donations. Oh man, I want to say, I don't remember if it's 100,000 or 250, but I do think that the school is going to match dollars. So keep in mind that whatever's thrown out there with whatever dollar figure attached, the school has apparently made a commitment to match a good bit of the funds that Turner's going to solicit. So again, I do look at the plans as being significant because it tells you a lot about, in a lot of ways, what Vanderbilt is willing to commit to, if that makes sense.
No question. No question.
Willie, I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for your time, and you've got a busy schedule coming up with the Predators, so tell people what's coming up, where they can find you, where they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, it's exciting for the Predators. It's about to get very busy. The Predators have had a lot of home games. There's a lot of road games coming up, and obviously the most exciting thing on the horizon will be the Winter Classic in Dallas, played in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day. They're expecting a crowd of about 90,000 for that game, so it is going to be special. The Predators embark on a 4-game road trip after Saturday's home game. So the team they're playing in the Winter Classic, the Dallas Stars, actually come to Nashville Saturday night. So that will be their first time playing Dallas since the Stars eliminated them from the playoffs last year. So I think it'll be a really good emotional game on Saturday and a countdown to kind of a once-in-a-lifetime kind of sporting event on New Year's Day.
Willie, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll catch you next week.
Okay, sounds good, Chris.
He's Willy Daunic at 102.5 The Game. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We appreciate you listening, and we will grab you more episodes coming next week.